Back when my boss and your favorite AutoTrader.ca co-host Jodi Lai drove the 2022 Nissan Frontier, I asked her how it was and she hit me with a 3-word response.
It feels old.
That was it. And you know, she is of sound judgment. She hired me after all. Okay, jokes aside, it was pretty startling, but it's nowhere near as startling as how accurate it turned out to be. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. I was in grade 11 when the last Frontier first came out, and it looked mostly the same until now, so this redesign was long overdue. And I gotta say, I actually really do like the look of it for the most part. But one thing I'm not so happy with, no more roof rails on this Pro 4X. That's a real shame to me, because not only did they make the Frontier look really unique, but they were functional too. So it's too bad those are gone. But again, I think it looks pretty cool, especially in this Pro 4X trim that is off-road ready. And then in here, what can I say? We can all thank the car gods that it doesn't look anything close to the last Frontier. But then on the other hand, it's not all that modern either. And who knows, maybe if the Pro 4X trim's red interior bits were in this one I'm driving, they would change the way I feel. But this one has an upgrade package that includes this leather upholstery, and that means all the red stuff, the trim down here on the console and the dash, as well as the stitching, well, it's all black, and it makes it look really bland and boring in here. And then some of the materials on the dash and doors aren't that nice. They are really cheap feeling. I'm not saying that it's totally different from the Toyota Tacoma. In fact, it's pretty similar, but that's not my point. My point is that Nissan had an opportunity to really raise the bar with this new truck, and it just didn't do it. It settled for the status quo. It really does feel like Nissan benchmarked the Tacoma with this new Frontier, which is fine until you remind yourself that that thing came out a good 6 years ago. So this does feel dated as a result. And then the other thing I have an issue with in here, this steering wheel, it tilts, but it does not telescope. And that means some serious problems. And those problems are called neck and shoulder pain. I'm not even kidding you. This is easily one of the most uncomfortable vehicles I have driven, maybe ever in my life. Now, the truth is, Jodi didn't have any of those issues when she drove the Frontier not too long ago. But don't forget, she's a good 8 inches shorter than I am. And that's really a problem because it's my arms. They're extended in this weird way. The steering wheel is on this weird angle. I just can't get it right. And then it combines with this really thin driver's seat to just be really uncomfortable. I'm not joking you. I am returning this thing as soon as we're done shooting today because I just can't live with it anymore. But then speaking of my height, as you can see, I do have enough headroom up here, but the back seat is absolutely atrocious. It's like comically tight back there. Take a look. I climb in there. First of all, it's incredibly awkward. And second of all, I feel like I'm sitting in a booster seat. Anyway, let's get back to the age thing. And you know, there are some modern amenities in here. Don't forget, this thing is brand new. So every version of the Frontier has both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But the Pro 4X is the only trim that has this 9-inch touchscreen, and it is pretty good. It's responsive, and the resolution is really nice. The only issue is the backup camera. It has to be one of the poorest quality cameras I have seen in recent memory. It reminds me of the pre-HD days. I don't know if the camera is really gonna pick it up to show you guys just how bad it is, but everything is so distorted, and it only gets worse when it's dark outside. But there are some good ways that this thing feels old, and it starts with the handling. This still uses a hydraulic steering system, and it is very nice. It's definitely heavy. You're gonna feel it at parking lot speeds or if you're out on a trail in this Pro 4X trim. But to me, it's a nice little reminder of the way trucks were, especially when you compare it to modern half tons that just feel way too light. You know, the powertrain is pretty old school too, even though it's new this time around because Canada skipped that bizarro Band-Aid solution that Nissan came up with last year, where it put this new 6-cylinder in the old body style. So for this 2022 Frontier, you've got a 3.8-liter V6 under the hood. It's paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission, and every Frontier in Canada does come with standard 4-wheel drive. But because this engine is naturally aspirated, it's got that really progressive torque buildup, and it's really fairly smooth when you roll onto the throttle. You hit peak torque at about 4,400 RPM, and it's 281 pound-feet, so it is plenty to get this thing going. And then it makes 310 horsepower, which I think makes this the most powerful truck in the segment. And I do like this motor for the most part, and the same goes with the transmission, though it is prone to the occasional clunky shift. And now, because this one I'm driving is the Pro 4X on top of the 4-wheel drive system that has high and low range gearing, it's got a locking rear differential, and there's a button down here by my knee to hook that up. Though I will say this does not have an automatic setting for the 4-wheel drive system, which is a bit of a bummer. Not that it's super commonplace in the segment, but it would be cool to have. And now the other thing about this truck, it's not all that comfortable, and I don't just mean how I'm feeling sitting in this driver's seat. I'm talking about the ride quality. This thing seesaws back and forth on rough roads, unlike just about anything I have ever experienced. And I used to own a single cab long box Ford F-150. It was a 2002, and that thing was silky smooth in comparison. Honestly, I would avoid concrete slab highways at all costs with the way this thing just bucks back and forth. It is insane. I've never experienced anything like it. And really, it is the ladder frame that's mostly the same as the last Frontier, as well as the leaf springs and the solid axle in the back. But I just wasn't expecting this from a brand new truck. Maybe having some payload in the back would help, but honestly, it is very bizarre. And then something else I found kind of weird. It wasn't even that windy the other day when I picked this thing up, but it was getting blown around like a shopping cart in a parking lot. I couldn't believe it, and that would explain why this doesn't have lane keep assist. And again, you don't get lane keep assist in the Toyota Tacoma either, but it's just disappointing that Nissan wasn't able to make it work here given how new this is. It does have lane departure warning, but no lane keeping. I think the Ford Ranger is the only truck in this segment you can get with lane keep assist, but I would love to see that here. But honestly, it just would not work given the way this thing drives. But otherwise, there's a ton of advanced safety kit that is standard in every Frontier, like blind spot monitoring, as well as forward collision warning with pedestrian detection and automatic emergency braking. There's reverse automatic emergency braking too. And there's even adaptive cruise control, though I do prefer using that with lane keep assist. And again, you don't get that here. But jumping back to the drive, about this engine, I do like it because there are no surges. It's that really progressive buildup of that torque. And it doesn't sound all that great, but it pulls really hard, and that also makes me feel confident that this is going to be up to the task of towing about 6,400 pounds or so, whatever it's rated for, given the different configurations. It does feel like it's up to the challenge, and that's what you want. That's my only complaint with something like the Ford Ranger, because that uses a turbocharged 4-cylinder instead of a V6. This is a bit of a better setup for towing, in my opinion, but the downside is it's not all that efficient. Officially, it's rated for 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers, which means it's worse than the Ranger, though again, that thing's got a 4-cylinder. But here's the thing about this. Now, I was doing a bit better than it's rated for when I went on my usual evaluation drive earlier this week, but now that I've been driving it for the better part of a whole week, I am doing much worse. And that means I'm doing worse than I did in both the Tacoma and the Ranger. But if there's anything this Pro 4X version of the Frontier has going for it, it is price. Because if you take a look at the Tacoma TRD Pro, that thing's about 61 grand before tax. And then the Ford Ranger Tremor, if you add that package to the Lariat, it's about 54 grand. But this one I'm driving, it's right around 51,500 bucks, which isn't too bad if you're looking at it in the grand scheme of the segment and these off-road ready trucks. But there's a different version that I would probably take, because an exclusive configuration for Canada, you can get the Pro 4X in a cab and a half. And that means that You also can't get this upgrade package, so you keep the Bilstein shocks, you get the red interior accents, but you're saving about $4,000 off the price, and that means it stays well below 50 grand before tax, and that is something I like to see. But the bigger dilemma for me is just generally what you're getting for the money. Now, no, you cannot get a Tacoma TRD Pro for this price, so that is something to consider. But overall, this just doesn't feel all that much better than a Tacoma for the same kind of money. And that is a big problem for me, given how good that truck is, even given its age. Now, unless you're loyal to the Nissan brand or you want something different than your friends, there's just nothing about this truck that's better than a Tacoma or maybe even a Ranger. Again, keep that in mind. And you know, given all the years that people have been waiting for this truck, that is my biggest disappointment. Well, that and this pain in my neck and shoulders. To recap, I like the new exterior styling, the relative affordability, and the gutsy 6-cylinder engine in the 2022 Nissan Frontier. I don't like how dated it feels despite being brand new, how much it pitches back and forth on uneven surfaces, or the low-res backup camera. This is probably the most critical I have ever been with one of my reviews, but I also don't think it's unfair. Finally replacing a truck that is literally half as old as I am gave Nissan a huge opportunity, but it decided to play it safe. And it's not necessarily that this is a bad truck, although the driving behavior and that steering wheel situation definitely are, but it's not better than the Tacoma, and that is the part I'm struggling with. I'll say it again, it feels like Nissan benchmarked this against a 6-year-old rival and called it a day. But when that rival is something like the Toyota Tacoma, settling instead of setting itself apart makes this 2022 Frontier a tough sell.